Hi, I'm Jan.
And I'm Tracey, and since retiring nearly 3 years ago, we have been so fortunate to travel with literally hundreds of days at sea.
For example, last year we sailed on 9 separate cruises on ships that ranged from mass market to expedition to even ultra-luxury cruise lines.
So in this video, we are going to rate which of those 9 cruises have given us the most wows.
And what are the cruises that gave us the most woes?
Before we dive into what wowed us and what didn't, let's explain how we scored each of these 9 cruises featured in this review.
Now, we rated each of the cruises across this set of categories to reflect the overall guest experience that we ourselves are looking for in a cruise.
Each of these categories received a weighted score, and now this weight reflects the relative importance to us. For example, we gave a little bit more weight to things like service, the food, and the itinerary because those tend to shape our overall impression more than, say, the poolside experience.
Now, to account for those cruises that performed consistently well across all categories, we included what we call a excellence bonus. That's because there's a certain feeling you get when just everything seems to be going right on your cruise line. This bonus helps reflect this in the scoring.
And all of this adds up to what we're calling the excellence score. And that's a numerical score that tells you how close the cruise came to delivering a near perfect experience based upon our own expeditions of what we look for in a cruise.
Yeah, and of course, it's important to note that this scoring reflects what we personally look for in a cruise. You may weigh things differently, or your interpretation of our observations may vary, and quite frankly, they should. Remember, this is not a scientific ranking. It's just a structured way that we are using to reflect our impressions and help you decide what might matter best to you.
It's also important to note that although one cruise ranks as number 9 of 9, we thoroughly enjoyed each and every one of our cruises.
And the cruise that came in at number 9 was our Western Caribbean cruise on the Norwegian Prima. Now, of all the ships that we sailed on this past year, this actually was the ship we were most looking forward to sailing.
We have taken more cruises on NCL than any other line, and we love the waterfront that's found on the Getaway class of ships. So we were super excited to try the Prima with its expanded Ocean Boulevard.
Yeah, the ship certainly has an interesting concept, but we found that this concept comes with a lot of compromises. Although we really did like the Ocean Boulevard with this nice space, the infinity pools located on each side of the ship, it was a really nice place to be able to relax.
And additionally, the specialty restaurants were fantastic. We especially loved the Palomar Seafood Restaurant.
They were fantastic, with the one exception, and that was the Food Republic. Quite frankly, the Food Republic had the very worst food we've had on any restaurant on any cruise ship at sea.
I would not eat this. I would not encourage anyone to eat this. I would not give this to any of my pets.
But there were other things we really liked about the ship, such as our balcony cabin, and it was really nicely appointed and spacious. We can also say that the entertainment was also very good. The Donner Summer show in the theater was very enjoyable. And once we got over the 1 hour standing in line, we loved their showroomers, although it was in this cramped Sid Norman's poorhouse.
Yeah, but some of the things about the ship just felt well off. The layout we felt was confusing. It seemed that so many places on the ship, such as the atrium, the very tiny buffet, the entertainment venues such as Sid Norman's, were way too small and way too cramped.
And the main pool was one of the smallest we've seen on a mass market line. And there wasn't an adults only area that you could find on some other of the NCL ships.
And while the specialty restaurants truly were great, both of the main dining rooms, that's the Hudson's and the Commodore, rated at the bottom rung of cruise food. And as we ended the cruise, we suffered through the worst disembarkation process we'd been on nearly any other ship, standing in line that wrapped around the ship for nearly 2 hours just to get off.
So all told, the Prima was not a bad cruise, but it does come in with an excellent score of just 48.
And now at number 8 on our list of 9 cruises was our transatlantic cruise on the Regal Princess. This was actually our very first time ever sailing on Princess Cruise Line.
And although getting on the ship was a bit rougher than we've usually had on a boarding day, we were impressed with the design of the ship, and it featured a really beautiful and thoughtfully designed atrium.
Now, unfortunately, when we got to our aft cabin, well, quite frankly, I saw that the decor was very outdated, and it was apparent that it just hadn't been maintained very well. You go out on the balcony, there was railings that were worn down to bare wood, there was gouges in the furniture, and a table, although large, that seemed something you might see at a cheap garage sale.
And although we were disappointed in our premium room, we did love the retreat, and that's Princess's adult-only area. It was a nice, quiet place, and it was very easy to find a place to relax.
We also thought that the food at the Crown Grill and Sabatini's, these are the 2 specialty restaurants, was actually very good, especially at Sabatini's, which actually was remarkable.
However, while the service was superb in the main dining room, the food was not at all what we expected to find on a premium cruise line.
Yeah, overall, we had a really nice, relaxing cruise across the Atlantic, and the ship really has a lot of charm and a great vibe, but the overall experience, quite frankly, didn't feel elevated to the level that we would be looking for in a premium line, as therefore it only delivered an excellent score of a 62. Now, coming at number 7 was probably the most fun cruise we had all year. This was our Western Caribbean cruise on the NCL Escape.
And this was our second time cruising on the Escape. The first time was when we still had kids at home, and even then we had a great time, just like we did this time.
Now, we had a balcony room, but we saw it was dated and much more cramped than we had remembered the first time when we were on the Escape. But we absolutely loved the ship with its wonderful waterfront with several bars and seating areas right by the water, which is a really nice place to see the ocean pass by.
And the atrium, well, it was just simply fun. All day long there were activities, and while it was busy, we were able to find a place to sit down and take part in the fun. The specialty restaurants were also good, not quite as good as they were on the Prima.
Now, on the Escape, they had also had a Food Republic, and we did give the Food Republic another try, and we regretted it. However, we were so excited for the food in the Manhattan dining room. This is one of the main dining rooms on the NCL Escape. It was absolutely fantastic. The food was great. The service was impeccable, and it really reminded us of what we remembered of NCL was like before the pandemic.
And once again, we were able to see the Rumors show, and it was also in the Sid Norman's Poorhouse. And then we did go to the theater to see what we believe is the most entertaining production show we have ever seen at sea, and that was A Choir of Man. It was epic.
Now, despite being a fun cruise, it was some of the things that we often see on mass market lines that really prevents the Escape from being higher on our list.
Although we could get seats in the atrium, many of the other places were extremely busy, and this certainly applied to the main pool and even Spice H2O, which is adults only, and we just found those areas way too busy.
And unfortunately, we weren't able to enjoy our balcony at night due to other guests that were, quite frankly, smoking weed on their balcony each night. So that was really disappointing that we couldn't really use our balcony when we usually like to use it.
Overall, despite these issues, the NCL Escape was a fun time and scores about a 66 on our scale.
And the cruise that comes in at number 6, we sailed the week before the Escape, and that was the Oceania Sirena, once again into the Western Caribbean.
The Sirena is an R-class ship, and it has a double capacity of only 684 passengers. So it was a completely different experience than on the NCL Escape.
On such a small ship, you're not going to get the polished production shows like we did on the NCL Prima and the Escape, but we did have an entertaining comedian and a decent group of dancers and singers.
However, being on one of the smaller Oceania ships means you don't have those crowds, although the bars during happy hour did get very busy, and lining up for the main dining room was also a very busy time.
Now, unlike the other two NCL ships we just discussed, which we never could get even close to the pool, we had no problem getting a place to relax by the pool on the Oceania Sirena pretty much anytime we wanted.
And the food was pretty good, although we had other cruises on Oceania which we think were better. But mostly it was in line with what you'd expect on the cruise line, which has trademarked the phrase, the finest cuisine at sea. Although we'll discuss in a few moments why that might not be so true anymore.
About the only disappointment we really had, though, was that during our cruise, Oceania transitioned to self-service in the buffet, and we thought this somehow cheapens the Prima experience, that small luxury cruise ship experience, as we saw that with self-service, the buffet got fairly messy compared to when food used to be served to you in the buffet.
Now, despite this, the cruise delivered, and the scores on the Oceania Sirena jump well ahead of the 3 previous cruises to 77 points.
All right, so now we break into the top 5, and what we have is number 5 is a cruise line that is sometimes controversial, and that is MSC, as we took a Caribbean cruise on the MSC Seashore within their yacht club.
This is really a story of a cruise of 2 ships. There is a busy, chaotic spaces on the ship, and then there's also the serene atmosphere of the yacht club.
Now, despite booking for the first time ever an interior cabin, we were impressed with the space of the interior cabin and yacht club and the amenities that this room actually provided us.
And these amenities included all that the yacht club offers, from a private, beautiful lounge, a private sun deck with a large pool and a couple of hot tubs, and the yacht club restaurant.
Now, outside the yacht club, the ship itself, it was absolutely beautiful. MSC knows how to make beautiful ships, and there's a lot of really fun spaces, such as the Pirates Cove for kids, the Jungle Lounge. They were just really neat spaces, but they just tends to get very, very busy.
The only real low point on this cruise was honestly the food. The butcher's cut was very good, and the yacht club restaurant is probably best compared to a really good main dining hall, but the food just really didn't wow us.
But the plus is the yacht club and the service we received allows this cruise to break 80 points on our excellence score.
And that said, our next cruise was another leap forward in excellence, and that was our transatlantic cruise on the Oceania Vista, coming in at 4th place.
Now, at the time, the Vista was the newest ship in the Oceania fleet and has a capacity of 1,200 people. It was nearly twice the size of the Oceania Sirena, which we already discussed.
However, just like in the Sirena, there were places that did get busy, but nowhere really felt crowded, and we were able to enjoy all the ship's spaces, including the hot tubs and the pools.
It really is a beautiful ship with plenty of spaces to relax and take in the views passing by.
The entertainment was typical of what you find in an Oceania ship, although the real entertainment for us was all the games and activities they held on the sea days during this transatlantic cruise.
And the food on this ship was good as we have had on any other Oceania cruise, which made the cruise that much better.
Altogether, the Oceania Vista breaks into the 3 digits in our excellence score at 112, but it still gets better as we make it to the top 3 and our first introduction to Explora Journeys.
Yeah, we boarded the first ship of this cruise line, the Explorer 1, and we were amazed as soon as we got on board. It is absolutely a beautiful ship. It seems more like a 5-star hotel or boutique hotel just taking off at sea.
With only about 550 passengers on this cruise in the Southern Antilles, space was never an issue, and there were 5 pools on board, including a large covered pool in the conservatory. So finding a place poolside was effortless. The only minor issue I would say was there was not a lot of shade in the outdoor pools.
Now, this was the cruise that made us question where Oceania's boast of having the finest cuisine at sea was actually accurate. For our money, the food on the Explorer was as good, if not better, than any other cruise ship on any other cruise line we've ever sailed on. And I'll double down right now and say that the buffet, which is the Emporium Marketplace on the Explorer 1, is the best at sea, period. Now, our observations give this bronze medal cruise a 114 on our excellence score, which is 83% of perfection.
And now we get to the second best cruise line we sailed last year, and that was Atlas Ocean Voyages. It was a repositioning cruise to the cone of South America on the World Navigator.
Now, Atlas is an expedition ship that is only about 10,000 tons in size and really reminds us of a river ship that really happens to be at sea.
This cruise was a repositioning cruise that took us all the way from Montevideo to Ushuaia, and we had stops in Argentina, the Falklands, and Chile. We also had an amazing Zodiac cruise at the Garibaldi Glacier.
Now, despite the fact that most polar expeditions on Atlas only have 150 passengers, we actually only shared this ship with 87 other passengers for the very first time. This means that the passengers were outnumbered by the crew, so crowding was impossible even for such a small ship.
The embarkation and disembarkation was seamless. It was probably the easiest we've ever experienced.
And for the first time ever sailing Atlas, we actually had a few nice weather days where we could actually use the pool. We were able to use the pool bar as well as the pool buffet, which is actually pretty nice.
The 3 Atlas cruises we've sailed on, it was also the best cruise food we've ever had on that line. And we were excited to see multiple familiar faces with the crew and the expedition team. So it kind of felt like we were coming back home.
Another advantage of only having 89 total passengers was we were able to have an extended 2-hour Zodiac cruise into the Garibaldi Fjord to be able to see Chile's Garibaldi Glacier, which was absolutely epic.
Although this experience was so great, it left us wishing we'd had more of the similar experiences during that cruise.
Despite my usual gripe about Atlas about their anemic Wi-Fi package and the issues we have with Atlas's pre-cruise communication, by the way, which is kind of left us guessing to what time we were supposed to show up for embarkation, we rated this cruise to be 83% of perfect with a total excellence score of 115.
And our best cruise last year was also on Atlas. It was the Atlas World Navigator cruise to Antarctica.
And I'm going to tell you the truth. We booked this cruise simply to be able to say we've been able to cruise to all 7 continents. We just weren't expecting this.
And certainly we were not expecting to be blown away with the experience. I've been to over 100 countries and Jan's been to over 95. And we both agree that this was the best travel experience on or off a ship that we have ever experienced.
As this was the same ship that we took to our South America cruise, which we just talked about, crowding with just 146 passengers was non-existent. The food might not have been as good as the South American cruise, but it's still very good. And the expedition team, led by Jonathan, was truly world class.
Unfortunately, we could not take advantage of all the pool deck offered due to inclement weather, but this was still a cruise that we will always talk about in the future.
Now, with a total excellence score of 117, this cruise tops the 9 9 of the year.
Now, we understand we just ranked 9 ships, which range from mass market to premium to small expedition cruise lines. That might seem unfair, as we certainly did pay more for some cruises than others.
So perhaps the real question is which of these cruises were most worth the money?
That's why we created the value score, and that takes the total excellence score and divides it by the price per day for the two of us.
Essentially, we're looking at which cruise gave us the most quality per dollar.
And the 9th best value cruise might be surprising, but it actually was our Atlas Antarctica cruise with a value score of just 4.99.
Now listen, Antarctica was a spectacular cruise, but it also comes with a spectacular cost, which was $2,300 for the two of us per each day. Now it's important to understand that the fares on Atlas are still a bit cheaper than many of the other lines that you'll be able to look at into going on Antarctica. So it's cheaper, but it certainly isn't cheap.
But this demonstrates that some bucket list trips like this are far more about the experience and not so much about the value.
Now, the next cruise shows that value is more than just being cheaper. At number 8, with a value that was more than double than that of our Antarctica cruise on Atlas, was the NCL Prima. However, the overall experience just wasn't consistent enough to be able to score higher in the value. And at number 7, with a value score of almost 13 points, was our transatlantic cruise on the Regal Princess.
And this was a good, reliable, middle-of-the-road cruise. There were a few bright spots, and really nothing was truly terrible.
But this middle-of-the-road cruise came in at a daily average price of about $480 for the two of us per day, which nudged it down on the value list.
Our 6th place value cruise was not what we consider cheap at an average cost of $614 a day. However, the Yacht Club and the MSC Seashore added a lot of value to this cruise, which barely nudged out the Regal Princess with a value score of 13 points.
So in the top 5 for value, the cruise that really surprised us was our Western Caribbean cruise in the NCL Escape.
So despite being a mass market cruise, the Escape did a lot of things right, especially in terms of entertainment, layout, and the vibe of the cruise.
And with the lowest cruise price of any of the 9 cruises we took last year, averaging about $458 per day, the NCL Escape earns its value score of over 15 points and deserves its place in the top best values of the year.
So coming in at number 4 was a truly luxurious cruise, the Explora 1. This ship makes a compelling case for being a competitor in the ultra-luxury cruise space due to its unsurpassed food, its great service, and beautiful rooms.
Now, this was not a cheap cruise at just over $700 per day, but it was far lower than its cost of its ultra-luxury competitors. But this is truly a case of quality triumphing over cost to earn a value score of just over 16 points.
And the next cruise earns the bronze medal in terms of overall experience and value, which is our Caribbean cruise on the Oceania Sirena.
Yeah, despite being a premium cruise line, our cost on the Sirena is only a few dollars more than on the NCL Escape, and it costs us $442 per day.
This meant we enjoyed a boutique luxury vibe with really good food at a reasonable price, giving the Sirena a value score of almost 17.5 points.
Now, if the Oceania Sirena won the bronze, then the Oceania Vista takes the silver for value. This transatlantic cruise and Oceania's newest cruise ship at the time cost only $550 per day for the two of us.
But it was the extended itinerary which took us into the Med all the way to Malta, the exceptional food, and the comfortable and well laid out ship, all combined to make it the first ship to eclipse 20 points on our value scale.
And at the top of the value rankings of the 9 wonderful cruises we took last year was our South American cruise on the Atlas World Navigator.
Take the same wonderful ship, the crew, the expedition team that we had in Antarctica, add an interesting itinerary, the best food that we've ever had on a line, at a price which was less than a quarter of what we paid in Antarctica, at just $534 a day. And you get a ton of value and a value score of 22 points.
So while the excellent scores tell you one story, the value offers a different perspective.
So you can spend a lot and get a great cruise.
Or you can spend smart and get just as great of a time. Now, watch these 2 videos to see the full reviews of both our best and our best value cruises of the year. And as always, keep on traveling.